This is the podcast, not an interview. This is a conversation. No gimmicks, just reasons. 84 reasons. Come holler at me. What up, my good people? I am being true. This is 84 Reasons. No games, no gimmicks, just reasons. Every week I sit down with former, current, future Florida Gators. Man, this next guest, man, it's hard to describe it, man. We go back a long ways, back to them playing days at Florida, man. I always used to refer to him as my little brother. A guy that's always played bigger than his size, always made his presence felt. Played for Florida for 2001 and 2005 for them at cornerback. Gainesville native, east side of Gainesville, for those of you who don't know. Formerly the Senior Director of Player Development and Alumni Relations Pro Liaison at the University of Florida. Now, CEO and founder of Elite Sports Management Group, formerly Elite Athletic Performance. That's what I know him for. Now the mentor, Asian manager, the friend to Anthony Richardson, the great Vernell Brown. What's going on with you there, VB?
I can't call it, man. What's going on with you, man? Appreciate you guys having me.
VB, man, before we even get to what you're doing now, everybody always talk about that second career. When football, sports was our identity. For those that have never done it, that's all we ever did, and got to get a job one day. Football just goes away one day. And I heard that you always wanted to help people. Always was in you. Was it always going to be something with the youth, or did it kind of choose you?
I've always been into helping and developing young men, women. And obviously me being a former athlete, sports was kind of the vehicle to do it. So when I first finished playing, one of the first things I did was start a youth organization, and that was an opportunity to develop kids, and to be totally honest with you, help develop parents also. And did that for a number of years, relocated my family and I down to where I live now from Gainesville, the Villages, Florida, the Villages, Wildwood area. Did the same thing here, was kind of the athletic director, ran all the youth programs here for the Villages. And then 2 years after being here, the opportunity presented itself for me to come back to Florida. I ran away from college athletics for a long time just because I wanted to watch my kids, grow up and be involved with them. But the opportunity that presented itself was it aligned perfect with where we were as a family, and it allowed me to still do a lot of the things that was important that I did with my kids. So took advantage of that opportunity and, started to help mold and develop young men. And then here we are now.
BB, you say you tried to run away from college athletics as long as you could. Dan Mullen comes back in time, and obviously, not to get into like his overall tenure at Florida, but what is a conversation like that like? Because we get settled into our regular lives, man. Look, man, I'm going to see my kids. I'm home every day. 352, I think it's 375-4683 pop up. Some of that. What is that conversation like when they ask you to come back home?
So, it was pretty simple. I had got wind kind of a couple weeks actually before he reached out that, he was considering hiring me for the position. And then he reached out maybe 2 weeks after I heard it for the first time. And I had heard it from several different people that was, kind of in the know. And then when he said, man, just come in and talk to me. And so I went in one Sunday and just, talked with him. And I told him what was important to me, which was my family, my kids. And I understand, working in college athletics, that you're going to miss some things. However, I'm not a fan of just sitting in the office for the sake of sitting in the office. We don't have nothing going on that directly involves me that I need to be at. And my kids got something going on, then I want to be able to get there. And he assured me that would happen. And man, once he did that, I accepted the position and kind of navigated the last, 4 years that way under his regime. And then, when Coach Napier came in, I made it known to him what was important to me if I was going to stay on staff. And he said, man, that won't be an issue. And so I was blessed to be able to work for two head coaches that understood that how important my family was to me.
BB, speaking of family, man, they definitely got the bloodline. Your sons, your track, football, your brother coach. He's doing it. So y'all in coaching, I have 3 children, and the last thing I want to do is put the pressure on them, or you quote being true of Vernell Brown's daughter or son. How do you maintain that dynamic of saying, look, I'm gonna push you, but I can still be a daddy in the crowd, even though I'm not just another face in the crowd.
It's kind of the thing is they'll never get from under the light of being Vernell Brown's son or daughter, or being Troop's son or daughter. But, I've always encouraged my kids to be individuals. I've never tried to push them to a sport. I never tried to push them in athletics, period. All of my kids have gravitated towards athletics, but, that's kind of the way they grew up with me being involved with youth organizations, so forth and so on. They grew up around athletics. So I got a daughter that ran track in high school. Believe it or not, she's my oldest. She's now a Florida State Seminole. She's not an athlete at the collegiate level. I got a daughter that graduated this year that'll run track at the University of Florida. And then I got a son that's a pretty highly recruited kid, my oldest son, sophomore in high school, and then my baby boy's a ninth grader. Just getting there. He should be a pretty decent recruit too. And then my baby girl, man, is burning the track up. Ranked nationally, #1 in all of her events across the country, man. Just a really gifted kid. It's funny to see 5 kids that grew up in the same household, but all very different. You know what I mean? They definitely got some good genes from an athleticism standpoint, but the mindset and mentality is different between every one of them. So that's the interesting part, man, that I love, navigating the waters as a parent and allowing them to create autonomy and choose their own paths, and just being supportive as a father, man.
BB, you talked about living in Wildwood. Listen, for those of you who ain't never been to Florida, Wildwood, that's where that cutoff is, where that nice interstate like break off a little bit. When you got to be going to Tampa for it to break off. When you're coming from Orlando, it kind of break. That's the first little town you're gonna see right outside Ocala. But you go from youth athletics to the creme de la creme when you're talking about, quote, I hate to use this, we're amateur athletics, but there's nothing amateur about the University of Florida. How did the youngsters prepare you for the student athletes? Because they different. I'm not saying they different in a bad way, but they got NIL, they got more exposure, they got, TikTok and all these different things. How does Vernell Brown keep the main thing when they got so many things going on in their head and they're trying to be the best athlete?
Well, I think, the biggest thing, and I think one of my gifts is just kind of meeting, kids where they are, regardless of how old or what level they at. At the end of the day, even though they're at the University of Florida and they look like grown men, to me and you, they still kids when you talk to them, when you watch them interact. And so just, meet them where they are and helping them understand what the goal is here at the University of Florida. I mean, yeah, you're here to play football and you're here to get education. However, this is also preparation for the next phase in life, which you and I both know at some point, and for most sooner than later, is coming. And so, just being able to have those conversations with them and just kind of enlighten them, and everybody's situation is a little bit different. Some people come from 2-parent families, involve fathers that, kind of have some inclination as to how to be a man. And then you got some that come from single parent families, just mom, and mom did the best she could to try to show them. But at the end of the day, you and I both know you kind of need a man to show a young man how to be a man. And so just being there for that, being there for a shoulder for them to lean on, somebody that's walked in their shoes, the shoes that they're walking in, sat in the seats that they're sitting in at the University of Florida, just gives you a lot of credibility.
Vernell, man, I always say when it comes to what we doing now, it almost got to pick us. Yeah, Dan Mullen called you, but it's something about that position to make you get in your car to drive up, 75 North. Get off. I don't know if you got off at Archer. I don't know if which one you got off on, but you taking on a huge commodity when you think about the fact that, yes, these players got the best coaches, facilities, resources, but that part that you do is pivotal because just like I know, 85 scholarship guys, everybody ain't getting out there. And that's just a numbers thing, not a talent thing. How does when you pick your position, you go, at what point did you realize, all right, man, this is the one I'm supposed to be doing?
So like I say, it was something I kind of always done, whether it was at the youth or the high school level, and the opportunity to do it on a stage like that and, impact young men who, that decision date is right in front of them. You know what I mean? Like, you can talk to a youth player or a high school player and they still got college. They still got all this stuff to kind of, endure before decision D-Day gets there. However, the guys at the University of Florida, they got, some of them 3 for the ones who lucky, but 5 max. And decision day is there. So, the opportunity to do that. And once again, one of the things I've always been into is molding young men and women. And it was an opportunity to do that. They say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, man. And I commuted an hour to and from the University of Florida for 5 years. And man, it's not one day that I felt like I actually went to work. The hardest part about my job was the hour commute.
You saw the recruiting aspect of things is crazy, right? When we was going through, it's about the team, the coach, Now, facilities. I mean, you go places, man. I remember when they said, man, the state of Florida would never get indoor facilities because if one get it, the other one's got to get it like a trickle effect. But now you're talking about a standalone football facility. These boys eating asparagus. They got chefs. It's something about that walk we used to take up the steps across the street. Now the boys get that extra 5 minutes make a difference. Talk about the changes you saw in Florida. Not forget the coaches. Just the change you saw from the old dome seem like it's almost to the street these days.
Totally different, man. The facilities, which we needed an upgrade. Don't get me wrong. The facilities when I first got to Florida looked just like when you and I played, which was a long time ago now. But definitely really nice, man. There's nothing. I can't understand why a kid wouldn't take advantage of all the resources and facilities that the University of Florida, and really, all the universities have them today. It's just a matter of, what flavors brought to the facilities and the staff, so forth and so on. But, everybody has a nice facility now. We finally caught up, man, and it is definitely totally different from our day. I agree with you. To me, there was some value in that walk from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Steve Spurrier Field, all the way over to the practice facility. But that's no longer the case. You actually walk right out the locker room, out the back door, and you're right on the practice field now, or out of the weight room onto the indoor. Beautiful thing, man. Once again, much needed at the University of Florida. And the kids, they only know what they know. So they know the facilities they see now. They don't know what you and I went through in the facilities we had back in our day.
Speaking with Vernell Brown now, the CEO and founder of Elite Sports Management Group, now mentor manager of Anthony Richardson. When I heard about you leaving Florida, right, and I saw you was going to be mentoring or continuing to mentor Anthony Richardson, I think about what that question was like when he posed it to you. But we think we know what we mean to people. Everybody do, especially with our kids. We think we know. But when I say VB, when I heard it, you were what we needed, because every single player needs that person that I can speak freely to. Because college is it's the best and the worst place in your life. I say it's the best place to be, but boy, there ain't no handbook on it. You sitting there, letting him speak freely, letting him grow in real time in front of you. But then he hit you with a question that even Vernell Brown ain't never got. What was that like when he said, "Hey, VB, man, Coach Brown, when I go, will you go with me?" What did that do? Obviously, I know the decision you made, but what goes to a feeling like that when the young man saying, "Man, I'm gonna need you even when I leave games"?
It was a great feeling. Definitely caught me off guard. What I did with Anthony in the beginning was no different than what I've done with a lot of other guys. Kyle Pitts could have made a case to do the same thing. However, Kyle's support system was a little bit different. And once again, there was never I never dreamed of having an opportunity to accompany anyone to the NFL. It was just me doing my job at the University of Florida, which I loved. But about a year and a half ago is when, he first presented me with that question. We was having one of our weekly meetings, and he just leaned back on the couch and he said, "Man, you know what, Coach, man?" He said, "Coach VB, I want you to go with me when I transition to the next level." He said, "Man, would you do that?" And it kind of caught me off guard. I said, "Well, Anthony, man, you realize, man, it's not just me. Like, I got a wife, I got 5 kids. Like, I'm not, this 25-year-old guy
yes,
that's, just me and can move how I want to move, man. I don't make moves no more. It's a movement for me." He say, "Man, Coach, I know all that, man, but I really would like for you to do that." So, that meeting concludes that day. I come home that evening, talk to my wife a little bit about it, just briefly, because like I say, he asked me and I was, it caught me off guard, but it was so far out, the reality that actually happening. My thought process is, well, that can change, and hey, we got to get there. We got to get to that point. And so nothing else was said about it, man. And, obviously we navigated this past season, continuing with our weekly meetings and all that good stuff. And, as it got closer to the end of the season and it was decision time, I did what I do as a mentor. Kind of laid out the pros and the cons for him to both decisions, whether you go or whether you stay, because there was pros and cons to both. And ultimately he made the decision to go. And the first thing he said is, "You coming, right?" And now this thing is real. Before he asked me, it caught me off guard. But once again, we hadn't even played the season yet. So, but now when he asked me, it's real. So the conversation comes back up in my household with my wife and my kids, because they old enough to be involved with decisions and things like that. And ultimately made the decision to do it, man. And hadn't looked back since, man. Been head down, helping him navigate the pre-draft process. The combine, pro day, all that good stuff, and ultimately the draft, which concluded in a very historic fashion for him, us, and really everybody involved, man. So I'm excited about the opportunity to continue mentor and manage him, and also be his chief of staff.
VB, you giving the pros and the cons. It ain't a young man alive want to listen to that con side. He looking at it, yeah, I get it. But he also looking at the fact that, like you said, everybody don't come from the same background. Everybody don't got two parents at home. It was something about you. He said, man, you can throw any con on there you want. As long as VB is involved, I can deal with it, because there ain't, I say this to people all the time. I say, listen, the only reason why Anthony Richardson wasn't the most famous quarterback in the state of Florida because Tom Brady played for Tampa. And people say, I said, because you got to understand, he's from Gainesville. He plays quarterback. He wears number 15. The boy don't run from, the spotlight. But at the same, it takes a lot of strength for a young man to know what he needs. Not, look, the X and O's, I get that part. The boy has been gifted from, 6'4", 244. The measurables are crazy. But with all that being said, it's something about 2022 that I saw from Anthony Richardson. It's when he didn't have media availability, he's still walking them. He's still answering questions. He's still taking pictures. He's still signing autographs. I watch him grow up in 1 year and a brand new coach, win or lose. You had a lot to do with that, because you get to tell him, listen, Anthony, I got to tell you about these blind spots. I got to tell you about these things that only I can see. And yes, you look the part, sound the part, but you got to be that all the time. Like that limelight been on you. It ain't going away for a long time. When he come at you the second time, the first time, all right, well, this boy gonna think about it. But when he come at you the second time, he like, cool, you gonna be with me? Now you got to go back to the wife and say, hey, this boy dead serious. So y'all gonna go. What was that second conversation like when you had to go to the wife for the second time to say, this boy, with everything we talked about, he's saying, Coach VB, you gonna be with me?
It was just the reality of him actually. He said that before, but he said it again, which means he really means it. And what does this look like for us? What does this look like for her, for the kids, so forth and so on? Obviously, having kids at critical stages, one that's in college, one that's getting ready to go to college, another one that's highly recruited. So these next couple of years are really important to them. And so making sure that aligns with what they have going on. And ultimately, I want to see Anthony be successful, which is how all of this started. And really not just Anthony. I'm speaking specifically to Anthony, but it was really all the kids at the University of Florida. I want to see them be successful, which is how our relationship materialized the way it did. It wasn't done with any intentions of doing anything other than helping him be successful. And so, the opportunity to go help him be successful at the next level, one of the things I've always told him, man, is I believe in you. You know what I mean? If nobody else don't, even when you play, you go back to the Kentucky game, which is probably in his mind one of the worst games of his career, despite what happened that Saturday, when he came off as that Sunday, we had a really long meeting, man, and it's just making him put everything in perspective and realizing that, man, all is not lost. Even though you think all is lost, it's not lost. You got the whole season to put the train back on the track. And let's put a plan together to do so, not worrying about the whole season, but we're going week to week. You know what I mean? Practice by practice, great week of preparation, great performance on Saturday. And then once you do that every week, now you can sit down and really put the pros, cons together and really make an informed decision. And, ultimately he ended up betting on himself, the hype behind him. There was some at the end of the season. But it wasn't, for most people would say he needed to come back to school a year. And, the one thing I knew is, I hadn't looked at the lineup of the draft and seen what teams was up in the top 10 and needed quarterbacks. And even worst case, he was the fourth quarterback coming out, some people would say. So even with that being said, and I had a pretty good inclination that, all of his pre-draft stuff was going to be done the way it was done. He was going to perform well at the combine, really well, perform well at pro day. And more importantly, the biggest thing is let's get ready for interviews. So we spent a lot of time kind of getting ready for the interview process. So I've said this before, but the combine was one for me well before he set foot on the field. Once the reports, I started getting text messages from guys within different organizations saying, man, he interviewed really well. And then the next day it came out that he had the best interviews of all the quarterbacks, not only in this draft, but the previous draft. To me, that's when I put my shades on, because I already knew what the on-field performance was going to be.
VB, you keep on talking about a plan. And that's one of the hardest things whether we current players, former players, future players, to have a plan, but to put it in place. You keep on talking about, man, we put a plan week by week, put the train back on the track. Because when it comes to the physical gifts, the boy, he got it. He can donate some. He got that part. But the one thing I remember about going through the combine process was I was in New Orleans with Tom Shaw. They kept stressing about the interview process. They said, listen, man, you wouldn't be here if you weren't good enough to be here. But when they sit you down, are they going to buy what you selling? Can you control the room? They used to tell us about holding court. The fact that, number one, every time he do an interview, he do an interview Saturday or Saturday night. He come in and have, he reassess everything Sunday. But then the draft comes, right? And I do not look at mock drafts. They get on my nerves. Mock drafts are not analysis. That's just somebody saying what I think. The fourth pick comes, right? That 15 minutes probably felt like an hour. What is that like for him and you saying when the fourth overall pick in the 2023 draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, because I know Coach Spurrier went number 3, but listen, man, he didn't have these big gigantic numbers like Stroud, like Bryce Young, but the head coach of Indy was in the house for that pro day. And that last throw, I tell people, I think I'll tell you something. You can train all year long, you can't throw a ball that far. This boy rolled to the right, threw it in the air about 70. Whether they caught it or not, whether short catch it or not, when he's the fourth overall pick, do y'all look at each other like what is that moment like for you and for him?
So, what a lot of people don't know is we were told pre like the draft starting that if he was around at 4, that they were going to take him. But there was some question as to whether or not he was going to be around at 4.
Yes.
And so, obviously for him, getting his name called, walking across that stage, which is something every kid in America that plays football aspires to have happen to them one day, was a surreal moment, man. Just seeing him take the call, shed the tears of joy and realize, man, we made it. You know what I mean? Like, despite, all of my upbringing and all of the struggles that I had during the success, the failures that I classify as failures, he classifies as failures throughout his tenure at the University of Florida. His name still got called, and not only did it get called, it got called pretty hot. That was a surreal moment for him, his family, for us as a team, because there was a lot of hard work put into getting to that day.
Two men from the east side of Gainesville. I don't know if you knew Anthony Richardson growing up or not, because obviously once you left Gainesville, your life moved down the way. You have a calling for just helping people. I just want to help. Youth level. Dan Muller calls me. Billy Napier realized, hey man, it's hard to find good help. Anthony Richardson, you say, look, I sit down with a bunch of them. Just so that speak freely thing hit me in a different way, VB, because I don't know if it did this to you. I didn't know what anxiety was in college. I didn't know what depression was in college. And even if I did, who am I going to say something to? Who? Now, I ain't like it is now. Yes, there was a VB on the staff when we was there. I don't know who they were. I couldn't say who they were. We had one. Listen, Coach Spurrier, Coach Zook, we had one. Well, there wasn't no Sunday meeting. There was no speak freely. You said this could have happened for Kyle Pitts, but this is the thing I want to get at. Forget the fact that you had a plan. This boy trusted you and your plan. He trusted both. I trust the individual first. I trust what he's saying second. And like you said, look, man, the one thing you said that hit me the most is that, boy, I believe in you if nobody else. Boy, listen, when we country boys, man, that's what my daddy say. If don't nobody believe in you, because in Anthony Richardson's life, he going to have some ebbs and flows, right? Kentucky, it wasn't his best. I get it. You the only one saying, boy, you better lift your head up. What's wrong with you? What is it like being able to just talk to him? Because the thing about Anthony Richardson or those type of athletes, everybody gonna smile at them, patronize them. The last thing I want to do is make them mad. Like, listen, they ain't gonna bust out their clothes to turn green. They ain't gonna do nothing. But you can talk to the person who just happens to be an incredible player. Talk about the dynamic of your relationship, saying, look, man, what they say, man, rules without relationships leads to rebellion. You got to build that relationship first. Right. Talk about being able to say, yo, Aunt, bruh, you tripping right now. That's the best part, because he got the X and O's.
I think one thing anybody will say about me and I think you will attest to this, is one thing I'm gonna tell you is what's on my mind, whether you like it or not.
True.
And so I think I've kind of grown to be recognized that way, throughout the building at the University of Florida, amongst the players, amongst my family, amongst anybody who really know me. So I think that in itself kind of goes a long way. You mentioned how long had I known Anthony. I met Anthony actually when he first came to Gainesville. He played on my 707 with my 707 organization for a little bit. And I always admired the way he took care of his brother. And I've told him that throughout his life several times, you know what I mean? But, for me, the ability to be able to, I'm always speak free and, like I say what's on my mind, regardless of who I'm talking to. And I think there's because most people won't say that to an athlete like him, like they won't tell him or anybody that caliber when they're wrong or when they need to put things in a different perspective. And I take pride in doing that. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, my job is to help you reach your goals and get where you want to go. And so based off my experience, my knowledge, and my expertise, here's how I see it and here's what needs to be done. And if you trust me enough to follow that, and then, the chips fall where they may. And fortunately, in this case, they fell in the right place. And here we are today. And I say that, him and I spent a lot of time together, but there were some other people involved also. But I did kind of, help lead the charge in him getting the train on the track and looking at it through a different lens that fortunately turned out to be a lens to success.
Elite Sports Management Group, I know y'all have one client. His name is Anthony Richardson. Is there going to be other clients? Because obviously, if people can see it, been to the website, seen the services about all these different things. If I'm a up and comer and I'm just seeing the authenticity, great photo, by the way. You look like you looking at him with the shades. Love that, by the way, black and white. But are you looking to have more than, obviously he's the first, are you looking to add more clients other than him?
I definitely, plan to expand. This year I kind of want to focus on him, but eventually definitely want to expand in some degree. So definitely it'll be a group at some point. Right now it's just Anthony, and with him being the caliber guy he is, hands kind of full with him. And this is one you want to make sure. I mean, all of them you want to get right, but right now he's the only client, and we're gonna make sure we get this one right.
BB, man, I'll be remiss, man. I mean, obviously, you one of my favorite teammates, because you always been the same, man. Always been the same. I tell you all the time, people always ask me about you. I said, man, we had this thing where we had this 250-pound sleds, right? We brought out there on that field, and BB just looking like, man, what I'm supposed to do with this thing, bro? You want me to pull this thing right here? All right, I'm going to pull it because I got to pull it, but y'all getting on my nerves. But I said this about you, BB. Never complain. Y'all had a special relationship. Y'all and them receivers, y'all could have did a documentary. That back and forth y'all used to get me through practice. Just out, because the one thing about it, we going eating. The one thing about a DB, if a receiver's nice, you nice. But the one that's chirping, you don't need to be talking. Yet not you. I can appreciate just the position you played made it so that, man, I'm out here by myself. I got to have a short memory. Good play, bad play. I got to get. It's all about technique. How much did what you chose to do athletically just help you in what you're doing now?
One of the things I think, man, is you can on the defensive side of the ball, especially out there on that island, you can take all the politics out of the game. Either you can play or you can't. And if you can't, when you make a mistake, everybody in the stand is gonna know you made it. You know what I mean? And so kind of having that same approach, man, that when you make a mistake, everybody gonna know. And I've always been a competitor, so I'm gonna compete at anything. We can thumb wrestle and we're gonna compete. And so, man, that's just who I am. I've always been a pretty confident guy. And you got to be out there on that island. So I think that attributes to me being able to, keep it real and say what I mean, what I say, and say what I mean.
5 kids, wife, support system. They the ones that make the biggest sacrifice, no matter what we do. But you talk about them being old enough to be in this decision-making process. What does Vernell Brown say to them? Because they super supportive of husband, daddy. But now this is a different thing for everybody. Forget football, man. We leaving the South. We are leaving the South to where they got that white stuff coming out the air. We got to get real coats. Because you've experienced the best I want to say geographic location there is, VB. What do you say to them, though? Because we always talk about what we do and how we do. We never talk about why we get to do it. That's because of the wifey and the kid. What does VB say to the wife and kids about not just this right here, but everything they've meant to you?
Well, I think, throughout our life, we've had some transitions. And fortunately, they all been really good. And so my wife, as well as my kids, I think they trust my judgment. If I make a decision that we're going to do something, one of the reasons why I wanted to include my kids, obviously my wife is always included, is because, they're old enough to where this decision can affect them too. And, no different than with Anthony or with anybody, when it's decision-making time, you sit down and you look at the pros and you look at the cons. And so that's kind of where we're at in the process right now. Like I say, either way, whether I move the old family to Indianapolis or whether I just get a place up there and kind of go back and forth, I'll be in Indianapolis quite a bit, regardless. But wanting them to understand how it impacts them, and how it could also benefit them, if we go there or if we stay here, just making sure everybody understand that, I think having them involved in the process will help prepare them for as their life happens and they start to go through different transitions, understanding how transitions work and the things that need to be done when you're making decisions.
They say when you go to the University of Florida, wherever school you go to, you're not making the decision for the next 4 years of your life. You're making the decision for the next 40 years of your life. What? It may be a hard question to ask, but even hard to answer. What does the University of Florida mean to Vernell Brown?
It means a lot, man. I mean, my family has a legacy there. I was blessed to be able to continue that legacy. My brother was after me. And now I got my daughter that'll be going there. So, the University of Florida means a lot. I mean, it's largely responsible for who I am today and where I am today. And the opportunity to go back there as an employee and impact, football student athletes, man, meant everything to me. And it's a chapter of my life, man, that I never forget. And once again, I think it's played a large role where it's actually responsible for me having the opportunity that I have now. So the University of Florida always be near and dear to me. Now when it comes to recruiting, obviously I would love to see my kids at Florida. However, that is their decision. Just because it was beneficial to me doesn't mean it'll be beneficial to them. And I'm pro create your own legacy wherever you go, even if that's at Florida. Just because I played at Florida doesn't mean you can't rewrite your narrative at Florida. You don't have to be in my shadow or under my umbrella. I want you to create your own niche at Florida if that's where you decide to go.
Formerly the Director of Player Development and Alumni Relations, Pro Liaison at the University of Florida, was with the elite athletic performers. Now we got the elite sports management mentor, manager to Anthony Richardson, but better human being. The one thing you do, VB, that you don't know is, man, you always lead with my wife and kids. Unfortunately for us, man, we get to be myth killers. When you talk about people that look like us, sound like us, it's always, oh, man, we don't love our wives. We don't love our children. The hell we don't. We love the hell out of them. Meaning people say, man, Ben, if you had to choose between them and this, oh, man, that don't even exist without them. There is no me without them. But let me tell you this. When my mama heard that you was leaving, my mama my mama care about two things. Florida winning games and Vernell Brown at the University of Florida going, right? When I told her you was leaving, this is what she said. What happened? What did he do? I said, Mama, the legacy continues, man. He got to ask a question twice that he didn't say no the second time. Didn't say no the first time, but VB, for me, Ryan, 84 Reasons, former players, boy, I love you to death, man. I love what you're doing. I love how you do it. And look, my child want to run track. She's in the state of Florida. I said, listen, if you meet a young lady with brown on her back, don't take it personal, because I know her daddy. She'll say, and then she said she wanted to play real football, right? I said, hell to the no. You ain't going out there with no real football, because they're going to knock you out. One, because you my child, and two, because you a girl. Daddy ain't never been to jail, but daddy got bail money. We ain't playing those games. But VB, man, listen, keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep enjoying this ride, man. And like I say, man, take it easy. Listen, tell Anthony to take it easy on my Titans, man. I know he in the AFC South, but when he do play my Titans, tell him to go up to old Rand Carthon and tell him, listen, bro, you picked the wrong squad, but keep doing what you're doing, big time.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate y'all having me, bro.
All right, VB, man, be good.
All right, man.
Yeah.